Good evening. Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 72 of Restitching the Tapestry. How are you? Ignore us being dramatic. That's just what we do, you know. It's great to see all of you. We're really excited to be here tonight. If for some reason for me this last week has felt like 3 weeks, don't know why. But it's just been a week, but here we are. So tonight's topic is going to be talking about amateur versus professional art and creation. So we will have a very exciting conversation about this and have some interesting perspectives. Before we even get into talking about any of that, we have a few things to work through, of course. First being how we've been doing lately and what we've been up to. What
Sorry,
that?
that was my dog running through the house. I don't know why.
I was like, is that an earthquake happening?
Yes, it was. It was a herd of beagle
That was
coming through my
hilarious.
house.
Well, Sherri, since your dog demanded the attention, let's go with you first. How is life going for you? What have you been up to?
Really well. Let's see. I went to a wine tasting over the weekend, which was a lot of fun. I got to taste a lot of wines that I would not have otherwise been able to taste. And our friend Thad and set up a bunch of cheeses and meats for us that paired well with the wines. And by the end of it, we were just kind of stuffing our faces and finishing the bottles and ordering way too much wine. So I have a bunch of wine coming. We'll see what I ordered. That's how they get you, right? But all the proceeds go to a charity. I think it's homeless kids or something like that, but it goes to a charity. Yeah, again, I wasn't listening because it sounded very MLM. Like, so I was like waiting for, when do you want to host your Tupperware party, Sherri? And it's just like, I don't want to I don't want to buy your Jesus. Just give me some wine. So, it was a good time. Good time. We had fun. Yep. Good. And Alsatian was there. We had a good time. We got a little twisted.
Wine tastings are like one of my favorite things to do. Mm-hmm. There's like you can pace yourself. You can just enjoy the ambiance. I like charcuterie snacks with mine. Mm-hmm. So whenever I go to a winery and they have that, I'm like gorging myself, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's what we had. We had just like these wonderful, basically charcuterie boards that Thad had set up for us with wonderful pairings and just beautiful cheeses and meats. And he thought of all of our dietary needs. So no pork or beef for me. But some lovely salmon and chicken and just some really beautiful things. So it was really nice. It was just like lots and lots of food. And then our friend Tara, her partner, Arlie made macaroni and cheese, and Arlie doesn't know how to make a little bit of macaroni and cheese. So Tara was telling us that Arlie was asking her, like, how much should I make? And Tara was like, why are you asking me that? You know you're going to make enough for 400. So just make what you make and we'll just deal with it. So yeah, so then we were just like, by the time we were like too drunk and the charcuterie boards were dead, we were just gorging ourselves on mac and cheese.
I mean,
drinking straight whiskey. That's
I personally think that mac and cheese should always be made in great quantity because that's just mac and cheese, right?
Yep. So that was it. That was my weekend. I've been recovering ever since.
Ari, how about you?
I wish I had gone to the wine tasting, but my car is out of commission right now, so I was just not able to go. And when you talk about it, I was just like, oh, I wish I could have.
Oh, I'm so sorry, honey.
That's okay. So this week, I have a lot of energy right now. And I think it's just because I'm really transitioning into this plant-based diet that I wake up in the morning and I'm just like ready to go. Like I go to bed at like midnight, 1 o'clock now instead of like 3 o'clock. So then I'm up and ready to go at like 8:30, 9 o'clock now. So I'm just like, I'm getting a whole bunch done in the morning. I'm getting more done during the day. I actually do my dishes every day, which is weird. I don't know. It's just all of a sudden I had a bunch of energy and I was like, am I being manic or do I just have energy? And I think I've decided it's just energy. So, whatevs. I'm happy about it.
Wow. Mental health struggles are so much fun though, aren't they? It's like, is this my mental health or am I going through a thing? Like,
I get that feeling too. Like the moment I'm feeling creative late at night, I'm like, oh no.
Right?
What's happening? So, for me, what have I been doing? Packing, and packing, basically. Like, if you looked at my office, I have like a tower of boxes over here. It's pretty obnoxious. So, tomorrow I'm getting the keys to our new house, and we're gonna go and like plot out like what room we want things to be, and I'm really excited about it. I hate the act of moving. Moving is terrible, but I do kind of like new things. So that's going to be fun.
Are you one of those packers that picks up an object and you're like, what do we do with this?
Kind of. I'm very obsessive. I'll be like, this needs to be centered here, blah, blah, blah. Like, just one of my gay powers, I'd say.
Yeah.
So let's see who's in the chat tonight. So we have Panda here. Panda, my friend, it's good to see you. Arpy is here. Lagiacris is here. Let's see. Leo is here, but might not be able to be here the entire time, which that's okay. You can rewatch this all the way through afterward if you'd like. And Sophia's here. Hello, everyone.
Hi, Sophia.
It's great to see you. So before we get to talking about current events, let's go over our show's mission statement per the usual. We live in a dynamic society where social media shapes us by creating greater opportunities for connection. It has led to a developing understanding of the adversity many marginalized communities face, the powers causing the adversity, and those who act as bystanders as those atrocities take place in real time. Our goal with this show is to make connections and have challenging conversations about social topics, current events, pop culture, and art. Together, let's weave the threads of understanding with what privilege we have in order to learn, educate, and create in a world that's growing. So, Sherri, with that thought being in mind, do we want to talk about some current events? Oh, and hello, Mackenzie. It's good to see you. Welcome.
Indeed, we do have some current events to talk about, y'all. Now, did we already say Happy Trans Awareness Day? Did we say this?
No, we have not said that yet. What is the matter with that?
We're almost 8 minutes in and we haven't said it yet. That's
right.
Yes.
Everyone, happy International Transgender Visibility Day.
Trans lives matter.
And just know that we love you, celebrate you, see you, and appreciate your part in this world.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. So, I know all the good feels.
I know, I love it. It makes me feel all warm and cozy.
So let me drag us down.
Oh, here we go.
Oh no, current events.
Roller coaster ride.
Oh, it's going to be a ride. Here, let me tell you. I mean, that was my nickname in never mind. That's a different story. So the Oscars. Apparently, there was some kind of ceremony this week where a bunch of rich people dressed up and handed each other awards. I haven't watched the Oscars since I was like 9 years old. Let's not talk about how long ago that was. But there's a thing that happened that maybe y'all heard about because every single frickin' person on the planet had a goddamn opinion about it, and they had to make sure that you knew about it. Mea culpa, by the way. So yes, Will Smith smacked the shit out of Chris Rock. Chris Rock's words. I don't know if ace open-handed slap equals slap the shit out of. Yeah. So we had a grown-ass man who, if you're not aware, in 2009, Chris Rock made a movie called Good Hair, which is about the culture and the stigma and the racism involved in Black women's hair. This man, Chris Rock, decided it was appropriate for him to make a joke about, brace yourself, a Black woman's hair. Jada Smith, who has lost her hair or is losing her hair due to alopecia, which is an autoimmune disorder, something she has no control over. When are we going to stop making fun of people's bodies? When are we going to stop making fun of things that people have no control over? When are we going to stop making fun of people? You know what I mean? So anyway, Will Smith got mad, lost control of himself. walked up on stage, smack, had some expletives exchanged with Chris Rock. Chris Rock took it like a champ and finished the ceremony. But immediately thereafter, there were lines drawn in the sand online. And you could really see a racial divide with what was being said. There were a lot of people on one side who were saying, oh, that was assault and Smith needs to go to jail. And there were a whole bunch of other people on the other side saying, you don't make fun of a Black woman's hair. I don't give a shit. You know, it was a slap for a slap. Thankfully, though, you know, it's the internet. The internet has passionate feelings and everybody talks about those passionate feelings. And then fortunately, within 24 to 48 hours later, nobody gives a shit anymore. So fortunately, we're past that now. So I just felt it was important to take a nod at it, to say, yes, this is a thing that happened. But now nobody cares about it except boomers who are just now figuring out that a thing happened and they should be upset about it a week ago.
It's the second wave.
Right. You get the second wave of old people. Maybe only I see them. But also, a deaf man for the first time ever won an Oscar. Also,
which is amazing.
The first Black man ever produced the Oscars. And also, Liza Minnelli and Lady Gaga were on stage together, and it was as perfect and as wonderful a moment as it sounds like. Liza Minnelli, of course, is older, and she lived her life in Studio 54 when she was younger, so not exactly the life of a nun. So she's going through some health issues now in her older age. She was there and she was fumbling and having a hard time, and Lady Gaga, you know, reached down and helped her out and said, I got you. And Liza Minnelli said, I know. And it was this beautiful little moment between the two of them that really needs to be celebrated. So I'd really like to highlight all of the stuff that everybody just kind of brushed over, rather than one instance, and let that color what happened that entire ceremony. So that's my take on the Oscars.
I like that. Yeah, like I got so emotional over the Gaga Liza Minnelli exchange. My gay heart was fluttering over that.
Look, it was like two gay points of light found themselves, like two atoms attracted. You know,
the stars aligned.
Right? All we needed was Bette Midler there, and it'd be the perfect trifecta.
Oh my goodness, right?
I don't think that stage could have handled all that.
Or dare I say, Madonna?
You know what? I was going to start the division. I was going to start.
Donny, be quiet.
I don't think I've watched the Oscars since the incident with Moonlight and La La Land, where they said it was La La Land, and then they're like, "Oh, it goes to Moonlight for Best Picture." I don't watch the Oscars because I try not to follow like celebrity stuff. Because I'm worried it'll feed into my delusional disorder, or that I'll see something that'll be like, I just can't handle this. So I really have tried to curate my life in that I just don't see a lot of celebrity news. That's why I'm also not on Twitter, is because I just can't handle Twitter for the most part.
See, that's why you need me in your life. I literally told you everything that was important about the Oscars just now. Everything else was just, more of the same.
Yeah.
Yep. You're welcome.
I appreciate that.
I got you, boo.
Lagiacris, because Lagiacris is also a Godzilla fan, asks if we think that Godzilla vs. Kong deserved at least one Oscar. I think that any Godzilla film deserves all the accolades. However, most awards are usually very gatekeepy when it comes to sci-fi fantasy stuff. So
horror movies too.
Yeah, and horror movies. So I'm not surprised that Godzilla didn't get any recognition. So
I thought they would have gotten like a special effects one maybe, but I don't know about the rest of it. Like, it's definitely not going to win Best Picture, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
So, but hey, like, it was honestly, I didn't watch the Oscars until all the drama happened, and my partner came running in. He's like, "Oh my God, you have to see this," and I was just like, "Do I?"
Yeah, I woke up, my Twitter feed was on fire. Like, I had to like cool my phone down before I could like check all the.
So who won Best Picture this year?
Why are you asking me that question? I literally told you all the important stuff. Who gives a shit about
Ari?
that?
We're just in this for the drama.
Yeah.
Hang on. We're gonna find out.
Ari's gonna find out. Well, while Ari's looking for that, Sherri, do you want to touch on the next current event item, if
Next
any.
current event. So who here has heard of the piece of human waste that we've trying to scrape off our shoe called Alex Jones?
Who?
Yeah, Alex Jones. So Alex Jones, if you're not aware, is a radio host, a right-wing radio host, and he tends to go off the deep end in conspiracy theory land, as many of them do. He's, in the real extreme right-wing kind of wing of things. So maybe you remember the Sandy Hook shootings that happened some time ago. He is the one who was saying that the Sandy Hook shootings were a big hoax, that this never really happened, and that it was all just a media, feeding frenzy. And the parents who are devastated, the parents who lost children in the Sandy Hook shootings, were devastated by this. And so they sued him. They took him to court. They took Alex Jones to court. And he has been, because he is wealthy and he feels he's above the law, he has been not going to court, and he's been avoiding his court dates. And so he instead offered a settlement to these parents. And these parents told him to fuck off. They don't want anything to do with his money. They want justice. They want to take him. They want to sue him, and they want to see justice. I think they want to put him in jail. So he's been too sick to go to court. Meanwhile, he's showed up to his radio show, at least with a phone call. He's been able to show up to his radio show, but he can't make it to court. I'm sorry. Priorities, mister. So the judge isn't buying it. And the judge has found him in contempt of court, and he has to pay $25,000 a day to start. And it goes up from there for every day he doesn't show up in court. Oh, and she moved the proceedings from his home state of Texas to Connecticut. So now he's got to travel too, and he's got to pay out the ass to take care of the shit. And he still is going to have to see justice. So finally, maybe we will see some justice. And that's where we are with Alex Jones. And I will keep you abreast on what goes there as that
it just
develops.
It just upsets me that a person like that would say such horrible things about a very tragic atrocity that took place.
There's a tree out there somewhere in the world that its only job is to create oxygen for Alex Jones. And he needs to go and seek out that tree and apologize to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is like the best insight you could do. let me just drink my tea really quick. Oh boy.
Who won Best Picture?
Coda. It was an Apple TV show because they're giving
Oscars
to streaming services now.
Yeah, that's the picture with the hearing impaired guy. That one.
Oh yeah.
Yep. So
I need to check that out.
We need to check that out. We should do a screening.
So my friends.
And
go ahead.
Oh, I got one more.
I was going to say, I think there was another one. I forgot.
There's another one. I'm sorry. I got one more. So the three of us live in Michigan. And so we are well aware that in December, there was this big hullabaloo about a certain busybody community member who went to a school board meeting and raised a big fuss that there were furries in the Midland County School, and that they had litter boxes in unisex bathrooms for these furries to meet up in, right? And there was a big hullabaloo about this, and it was a big mess, and blah, blah, blah. And it was so serious that some poor adult-ass, grown-ass person who went to college and worked his way up to be a superintendent of the schools had to say to this human being, without laughing and without murdering her, there is no truth whatsoever to this false statement accusation. There's never been litter boxes within the Midland public school system. And it is such a source of disappointment that I felt the necessity to communicate this message to you. Grown-ass man had to say that to this person in his adult voice.
And it went viral too.
Oh, but this isn't unique to Michigan. I don't know if you know this. This has not only happened here in Michigan. This is an urban legend that goes back to at least 2008. That's the earliest instance I've been able to find about it. This is an old urban legend. And it's still persisting to today. In fact, in February of this year, a Republican lawmaker in Nebraska made exactly the same claim, apparently without even giving the matter the most cursory of fact checks. So this is from the AP. Gird your loins. So a Nebraska state lawmaker apologized on Monday, this last Monday, after he publicly cited a persistent but debunked rumor alleging that schools are placing litter boxes in school bathrooms to accommodate children who self-identify as cats. Senator Bruce Bosselman, that's right, say this dumbass's name, he needs to be known. Senator Bruce Bosselman, a conservative Republican, shocked, repeated the false claim during a public televised debate on a bill intended to help school children who have behavioral problems. His comments quickly went viral, and you can find this on Twitter because it was all over Twitter. It had over 300,000 views. And it drew an onslaught of online criticism and ridicule. Bosselman initially said he was shocked when he heard there were stories that children were dressing as cats and dogs while at school, with claims that schools were accommodating them with litter boxes. They meow, and this is a direct quote from this grown-ass man. They meow and they bark, and they interact with their teachers in this fashion, Bosselman said during a legislative debate. And now schools are wanting to put litter boxes in the schools for these children. How is this sanitary?
First of all, hearing that they bark kind of reminds me of the Roseanne, where they said your daughter is barking in class.
So when I know furries, I'm close friends with furries. They spend thousands of dollars on their outfits. There's no way you're going to let some third grader take it to school, first of all. And
it's probably like the cat girl, like the cat ear, like because you have cat ear. Maybe some
can't find them. I'm
Well,
gonna wear it tonight in honor of the
school,
story.
and like they wear their cat ears to school, but they're dressing up like cats.
But they're furries. Like clearly somebody who doesn't understand that subtle distinction between Neko and furry. So yeah.
I don't even know what to say.
That's if it had to be my brain, it had to be yours too. You're welcome. And picture what he looks like in your head. That's exactly what he looks like. Like you can go Google him, but picture what he looks like in your head. 100% what he looks like. Looks like he hasn't been laid since 1986.
It's
probably has to eat bran 3 times a day. That's what he looks like.
It's just like white men in general, like straight white men, just don't understand a lot of basic concepts because I've heard things from like senators before that we shouldn't give tampons to people for free, like women for free, or people with vaginas for free because they use them as sex toys.
I proposed a new segment last time, and Ari and Donny were all for this. Should we ask a straight white man?
Sure.
Are you gonna? Yeah.
Oh.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you a cis, het, straight white man. Reggie, ask you, why are your people like this?
I have no idea.
And that's it from the streets.
They surprise me.
That's what we have from the streets, ladies and gentlemen. A cis, het, straight white man, as befuddled as we are. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard.
On the street. Look, this is real broadcasting you're getting from me. This is hard-hitting news.
This is the real content, my friend.
Man on the street, literally.
We
are delivering.
Now, Panda has said something, though, that I do want to hit on before I walk away from this. They can't attract trans students anymore. And that's exactly actually what this is an analogy for, right? It's this othering. It's this group of people that we don't understand. And that's absolutely what this is. This is an analogy for them. This is the same thing. So it's absolutely, it's funny, but it's also tragic at the same time.
Well, and what the truth is, they're still invalidating trans students. Mm-hmm. They're just, they're disguising it.
The rug so that they don't exist anymore in the public sphere of school systems or the community.
They're burying it in the litter box. Sorry,
that
was bad.
The janitors would be happy, like, because I don't know if you remember middle school, but the bathrooms were horrible. Like now all we got to do is dump it in the trash. Woohoo! Like the janitors would be all right with it. What?
I
can't own that joke. I heard that on internet today. I can't own that one.
I just humans.
Right.
Humans.
I wonder what, straight white men think about like the squat toilets in Japan, like where you actually have to get down, and I'm just
right.
Would they be able to do it?
Most of Asia, yeah. Anyway, so that is the news as I see it this week.
I thank you. So let's talk about amateur versus professional creators. Sorry. Okay, composure, Donny. All right, here we go. So, well, obviously, you know that all three of us are artists in some degree or capacity. I like Ari and I, we're both writers. Sherri and Ari are both artists as well. So there's like a lot of like context when it comes to thinking about what defines an amateur artist slash writer versus a professional artist slash writer. Before we get into talking about that, though, I think the best thing that we should do first is probably define what an artist is and define what a creator is. Sherri, or Ari, like, how would you define artist?
You were waiting on me. Okay, I'll take the lead on this. So, in my opinion, an artist is someone who creates. But the difference between so it doesn't matter what you're creating. I know that in the notes, Sherri mentions YouTube creators, writers, fine arts artists, or in Sherri's case, like fiber artists. They're all creating something. It's just the difference between like an amateur versus a professional is that an amateur doesn't make money off the things that they create, while a professional does charge and gets money for the things that they're making. So, like, for instance, I would consider myself an amateur artist. Maybe not so much a writer, but I haven't made very much off my writing, and I make no money off of my paintings or art. So I'm definitely in the amateur range. I haven't quite come up to the professional level, despite my best efforts.
Well, I mean, that's the literal definition, right, of amateur versus professional. As an amateur doesn't get paid, and a professional does get paid. That's why I was like, we need to define what some of these terms are, because what exactly are we talking about here? Because there's the art establishment, which has a very somewhat nebulous, but also somewhat clearly defined definition of what being an artist is. And it is ever changing, but it's also kind of its own thing. And then you have more of the outsider artist market, which is kind of its own thing, and so it really depends on what are you talking about, like as far as who's an artist. I mean, and you don't need a degree. It's not like being a medical doctor where you have to have a medical degree. You can put your shingle out front and say, hey, I'm an artist, and ooh, you're an artist. Congratulations. You know what I mean? Like there's not any rule or law or any kind of anything. Like anybody can call themselves an artist.
It's just easier when you study in a school and you do that pipeline into the fine art world, because they give you the certain set of tools in order to be like an artist and kind of get to know people and know where you can put your art.
It's networking. That's part of it. Like I know, I have friends that have gone on to be museum curators and gallery owners, and yeah, so I can give heads up to some of my students and give them a leg in, or I get a leg in sometimes into a gallery just because I know a guy or whatever, or I know a person. You know what I mean? So there is a lot of that. I think that's true in most creative industries. That's true in acting as well, because I've also been a professional actor. So that's true as well. There's a lot of nepotism that happens. That's true too. But yeah, so when you go to art school, you learn not just the art world and how to navigate it and what that means and what that looks like, but you also have this group of peers that you can take your work to for critiques, and you can learn how to better your skills. Like if you're working just by yourself, it's kind of like learning to write, right? Like we all have our pitfalls when we learn to write. Like I tend to fall into the passive voice a lot. And if I don't have someone there pointing it out to me, I can easily miss it, right? So I have to have, it helps me to have somebody look over my writing. Same thing's true in art, right? Like there are things that I'm doing that are pitfalls in art that I don't see necessarily. And to me, it looks great until somebody points it out to me. And then I'm just like, oh, you're right. That could, I could use work. And then somebody explains to me how to do it, right? Like that's part of the art community as well, is learning and growing from each other. And so while the art community is very competitive, that's the art establishment that has made it so. Artists themselves tend to be very generous with their time and with their knowledge. To a certain degree, but you start to get above a certain price level, and it's like anybody else, and they're just a bunch of dicks. But once you're, if you're kind of regular folks still, most artists tend to be very generous with their time and with their knowledge. But so you learn technique, you learn, you get access to the art world, you get access to, like you said, kind of the pipelines into the art world. You have, access to great studio space where you can work and you can explore different mediums. You're pushed creatively, to be better and to do better and to learn better. And because once you learn what the rules are, then you can break them. Right. If you don't know what the rules are, then you're going to tend to fall into kind of stereotypical kind of common patterns. And so that can keep you from selling as well, because your art's just going to look unremarkable. There's not going to be anything unique about it. There's not going to be anything really that's marketable about it. And so you learn kind of what some of those things are, right? And you learn kind of what people are looking for and kind of what people are going for. You learn the basic tenets of design. You learn, the basic tenets of how to build a page, how to arrange things on a page, what's pleasing to the eye. So there's a lot to it. You know what I mean? Like I said, when you're getting an art degree, and you're getting a fine art degree, if you're getting a BFA is kind of halfway towards a master's in any other program. And I know I said this to you kind of offline last week, but just so the whole world hears it, right? Like a BFA is a little further than a bachelor's in any other degree. When I got my BFA, I had written a grant and gotten it. I had my own solo show. I had, put my work out into shows internationally. That was all these things were required of me, by the way. So then I did it for the experience. Like these were all requirements, which I don't think there's that kind of requirement in most other degrees. You see what I'm saying? And I had to write a thesis. And then when I got into my master's program, right, like it's the same thing, just more intense. You have to do more, you have to show more, you have to get involved more. And the hope is that, you'll get gallery representation at some point. So if you get gallery representation, then the gallery expects you to produce so much work for them every year. And then they kind of promote that work for you every year. They keep a percentage, and then whatever else, you get to keep. And then they do shows for you. Sometimes they'll loan your work out to other galleries, right? But depends on the contract you get with that gallery. But that's kind of one of the end goals, is to get a gallery representation so that you can get that kind of steady work and that steady income kind of coming in from your work. And that's hard to do just on your own, because how do you get to know those gallery owners? How do you get to know what that looks like? How do you get to know what people are buying and what people are looking for without that?
Mm-hmm.
So
I would argue that it's pretty similar when it comes to professional writing as well, especially if it's creative writing. If it's professional writing, like business writing, editing, research, so on and so forth, like it's a whole different, the goal isn't necessarily to produce content,
right.
whereas for creative writing it is.
Mhm.
And Ari, as an artist, did you want to share any thoughts?
I was just thinking about the question, does monetizing something change the way that it's created or the focus of the artist? Because you were talking about that a little bit, that like when you create something, you have to think about like that end goal of selling it.
I mean, sure, right? Like I want to be a professional artist. I want to make money. And so I need to keep my customers happy, right? So I work, at least I used to work, I don't so much anymore, but I used to work a lot on commission. And so my commission work was, what do you want? right? What is it you want? It will look like my work because it'll have my hand on it, right? It'll have my flair to it, but I'm making what the customer wants. And let me tell you what, the customers, all of their taste is in their mouths. So you do have to kind of walk them through it because they have no idea what good design is and what good, coloration is and stuff. So I would walk them through because I was making, costuming for them or whatever. And so I would walk them through the fabric stores and help them pick out better fabrics, to match their, what they needed and that sort of thing. And and then, but you're making what they want, you know what I mean? Because you're trying to make money. If you have gallery representation, you have a little bit more freedom there, but also, I want to make art that's easy to understand, that's clean, clear, and easy to understand. I want to make art that's marketable. So I don't want to put anything on the picture plane that is going to be confusing. I don't want to put anything on the picture plane that doesn't need to be there. You know what I mean? Like you need to self-edit. And that's, again, hard to do unless you learn how to do that, unless you have, build those skills up over time. And you really need a peer group, I think, to learn how to do that over time. A peer group who isn't afraid to be honest with you and you're not afraid to be honest and vulnerable around. And that's hard to come by, in the real world, right? That's hard to get. But yeah, and so, that's always kind of in the back of your mind, like, where should I put these elements that they're the most pleasing? Where should I put these elements that they have, good rhythm, so that they have good, variety, good unity, good, all these different. That's what you learn in design classes. That's what you learn in, the elements of design is you learn how just to lay out your image so that it's easy to understand and easy for people to follow. I could take you through any of the old masters paintings and break them down for you and tell you all of the different design decisions that were made, things that were put in there just for design decisions and other things. Everything that you see in a picture plane by any professional artist, it's there on purpose. It's serving a purpose. So if you're looking at your work and you have something in there and it's not working, it's not doing something in that piece of art, get rid of it. It's just wasting your space and it's wasting your time. You only leave the things in there that are carrying their weight.
So is that why it takes such a long time to, say, create a painting? Is because they're thinking about all these elements for a very long time?
Sure. And you look at, right, we can walk through the DIA sometime, which I would love, by the way, but we could walk through the DIA sometime and they have some paintings there that like the artist died or whatever, they just never finished it. And you can see the underpainting through the layers of paint. And it's very different from what the finished painting is. And they have x-rayed paintings, right? And they're always like, oh, there's a hidden painting underneath. That's not a hidden painting. That's just what it started out being. That's not where it ended. You know what I mean? And that's so common. My paintings, like if you went through them, they're just like, there's lots of swearing and stuff involved in there too. But yeah, like painting, you fight it, man. Like paintings fight you the whole way. Art fights you the whole way. But it's, man, but when you get it and it's done, it's there. And it's this thing that you've created that's never existed in the world before. And it's like nothing else, right? That creative process is like nothing else in the world. It's like what I hear a runner's high is like. I don't want to shock you guys, but I'm not a runner. And so, I know, weird, right? I
used to be a runner, and from when I create something that I'm like really proud of, there is kind of that feeling of satisfaction after you're done. But I tend to be like Jackson Pollock when I create, so I just make a whole bunch of paintings, and then if I don't like it, I will either redo it or just throw it out.
So Jackson Pollock also very carefully thought out paintings, though.
Right, that's what I'm saying. He would create all these paintings, but then you would like find a bunch of the rejects in like the dumpster because he was just like, these aren't the ones that serve my purpose.
See,
he
like
was also a drunk and a depressive. I don't know if we want to model ourselves and our creativity after him.
Here is how it differs for me, because I am not an artist, at least in the same capacity that both of you are. When I hear about people throwing away their stuff, because I guess as a poet, it's easier for me because my canvas is easier to manipulate, right? Because if I open up a Word document, like I can just backspace something or save the file or whatever, or have it in a notebook somewhere. But I know that like paintings and stuff take up more space too.
Didn't we talk about Botticelli before, where he like burned all of his art except for like a couple pieces that survived?
Yeah, Botticelli painted, of course, the Birth of Venus. So he was painting all these pagan imageries. This is during the height of the Renaissance. And so this is the Renaissance in Florence. And it was all these nouveau riche middle class people that had all of this money, and so they were doing what nouveau riche people with all this money do. They blow it on dumb shit like sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And so like Florence was just a big party town after a while. And Botticelli was making all these paintings of all these pagan symbols instead of the Christian imagery, right, that the church thought he should be making. And for a long time it was tolerated, and there was like a lot of, there was a lot of give and take there. But there was this one priest who came through, and he was just like really strict, and he was really like pissed off about this. And he was just preaching like how everybody's going to go to hell, and this is the new Sodom and Gomorrah, and blah blah blah. And Botticelli just heard one of his sermons and took it to heart. And so the guy had a big book burning, and Botticelli chucked a bunch of his paintings in the fire. Yeah, so that happens too. It's who knows, I mean, yeah, who's to say? So, but yeah, I tend to, I don't know, hoard all my art. I'm with you, Donny, in the messier basement.
So there was a day, like, and I think Ari, I've talked with you about this. There was a time in my life where I did like get rid of writing, and I regret it so much now, because thinking back on it, I'm like, I did have some things that I could glean from those things that I discarded.
Right.
And now I've just adopted this philosophy where I'm like, well, I'm not getting rid of anything. Like, I keep everything now, at least as long as if it's written, I keep it. I'm not like a hoarder in other ways, but
I unfortunately threw away all of my high school journals. So my middle school journals. So like when I was in 8th grade, talked about the Columbine shooting and like my perspective as a student, being in high school and talking about like September 11th and collecting all these news clippings. So like my experience with what that was, like I remember it, but like it's different when you see the writing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, and like I hoard my art now. I actually slowed down. I was gonna think about making another painting recently, but like I haven't made a bunch of art recently because I've got a whole closet full of stuff that I have wanted to get rid of, but like I just haven't found the outlet in which to do it. Like that transition from how do I go from being an amateur and like actually selling my art where people want to buy it?
So a good way to go is art fairs. Get a booth at an art fair. Go to flea markets. Flea markets usually have a much lower cost of entry. And a much lower, like art fairs, usually they want to see a picture of what your booth looks like so that they can know if it will fit in, because they're trying to ride the straddle between fine art and craft. But I know you should watch what's the name of the the YouTube channel? It's Rafi and Klee. Can't remember the name of the YouTube channel. I'll try to remember to put it in a comment down below when this goes in the reruns. But he talks a lot about building up an art career as somebody who didn't go through the traditional art channels. And he's not poo-pooing the traditional art channels. It was just not for him. And so he and his wife, Klee, or partner, I don't know if they're married, they went through doing a lot of flea markets and just selling their art there and just listening to what people said and, taking, their, whatever, and just kind of building. And just over time, like now he's got his YouTube channel and, he makes art and sells it all the time. And, he's just like a professional artist now. And just like,
that's so interesting.
And she does jewelry.
So like that, I think that's really interesting how like I kind of want to label that as like underground art commercialism, something to that effect, right?
Outsider art.
Yeah, outsider art. Like for writing, it's like underground. It's like sometimes called like underground.
Kind of underground art. Because what we're talking about is we're kind of putting on a pedestal the art establishment, right? Which the art establishment's put itself on that pedestal. I don't know that we need to support it. You know what I mean? Like they kind of built that pedestal for itself. I gave you guys. Do you want the short version of my outline?
Sure, yeah.
I'll try to do this because it goes all the way back to like ancient Greece and Rome, right? So from ancient Greece and Rome up to the Renaissance, art was just a vocation. It was like welding. It was like, what?
Like plumbing.
It was like plumbing. Yeah. It was just a means to an end. And so you would have a workhouse where you'd have a bunch of people working for you, a bunch of artisans working for you, and they would create the art in, in the vein of whatever the emperor or whoever wanted, right? You see a little away from that in ancient Greece, but we're not going to talk about that. We're not going to pick nits here. Classical Greece, you start to see some individual artists, but above and beyond that, it's generally just like these big workhouses, and you don't learn individual artist names because there is no individuality in art because it's not treated as a fine art thing. In the Renaissance, that you see a shift happen, though, because they do look back to that ancient time of Greece when there were these individual artists that were signing their work and getting known individually, and they started to see this as an aha moment. And during the Renaissance, the French word means rebirth, right? So they're being reborn into these ideas of ancient Greece and Rome after the Dark Ages, and so they're interested in science and math and all this stuff again when it was kind of all underground during the Middle Ages or the Dark Ages. And so in the Renaissance, we see this individuality start to come out in artists. We start to see these individual creators that become these superstars that we all know, right? The Turtles, right? Raphael, Michelangelo, right? Leonardo.
Yeah.
Donatello, not turtle worthy. He's a pre-Renaissance master, not a high Renaissance master. So screw Donatello. But anyway, so, right? So we see this kind of shift happen, though, where we start to see some individuality and they start to raise their status up from craftsperson. And so we start to see this divide between craftsperson and somebody worthy of this kind of high esteem, of this high Renaissance, of being this kind of great humanist thinker.
So in my opinion, the Renaissance artists, whenever they would get a new commission, would say cowabunga.
Sure. So that's kind of how that works. So we see more individuals, kind of crop up during the Baroque period, during the Mannerist period. Then in the Rococo era in France, we start to see Louis the 14th, and he starts the Art Academy, and he's very interested in art. And so he kind of starts this standardized, state-driven kind of art school. And this becomes the kind of center of art for Europe, and this becomes the desirable art of Europe. And it's very classically styled. It's very, this is what you see. Women can get into the academy, only very few. Mostly it's dudes. And you start off painting and sculpting all of those classical sculptures, and then eventually you work up to nudes. Unless you're a chick, then you can only paint the sculptures. You don't actually ever get to work on nudes, but you're trained in this very classical way. And so it creates a specific style of art, a specific look in art that becomes very popular at the time. And so that begets the salon. And so the salons came out of rich women who had these rooms in their houses where they would have all of this fancy art that they would show off to their friends. And so they'd have these parties that they'd invite all their friends over to. And then eventually that becomes institutionalized. And the salon becomes this big institution where, and it becomes very competitive, where these artists want to get their work into the salon. And that's the only way now, is if you go to the academy and then you make this academic art and you get into the salon, that's the only way you can become a professional artist. And so it becomes this big thing. And so that's during the 18th into the early 19th century. In come the Impressionists in the 19th century. And the Impressionists are not playing by the rules, and they have a whole different way of working. And Napoleon sees these outsider artists and sees their worth. Napoleon III sees their worth. And so he starts this Salon des Refusés show, which is, the refusal art. For all of these artists that can't get into the salon. And so we see this kind of nod towards this avant-garde art, this kind of, cutting edge, latest thing coming kind of art. And so then we start to see that come up as the big thing. And so this kind of really goes on up until kind of World War II, when things start to shift. So during World War II, I don't know if you're aware, but there was a big war over in Europe where suddenly Europe was no longer safe to be if you were a creator, right? Think where World War II happened. Germany, Italy, right? In Europe. So we have Germany and Italy. They invade France and England. Those are all of the art centers, all of them. Mm-hmm. All of the big art centers are just now being taken over by the Axis powers. And so now it's no longer safe to live in any of these countries if you're a creative person. And so they all start to jettison out to where? The United States, because we're insulated. We have these two big oceans between us and Europe and Asia, right? And so we're not really that affected by the war. And so they come over here and they start training the next generation of artists. Enter Jackson Pollock in the 1950s. He's one of those artists. He learns from one of these European artists. I think it's Breton, but he learns from one of these European artists, and they start to develop this truly unique American style for the first time. Always before this, you saw genre art where it was like, you know, realism paintings of like the Hudson River paintings or whatever. Now we start to see this abstraction come out, and this really avant-garde art starts to happen in the United States for the first time. And for the first time, the cultural center shifts from Europe to New York City. For the first time, that's when we see that happen, and that's why we see that happen. And so that's when the gallery system starts to happen, and we start to have these galleries come up, like Peggy Guggenheim opens her gallery and showcases Jackson Pollock. And you have these art critics who would write about these artists. And so now these become the institutions that make or break art careers. And that's the system we still have to this day. It's a system of art critics and galleries that really run the art department and really run the art world, I should say. Now enter into the 21st century, and we have the internet, and we have things like Etsy, and we have things like, you know, people having their own web pages and YouTube and all of these other creative outlets, where suddenly now outsider artists can have their own voice, and they can have their own place to showcase their own art, and they can have their own way to kind of build their own, you know, their own following. And so, and I've had this talk with a few of my colleagues over the last few years, like, is this going to be a great democratization of the art world, which had been controlled by this art establishment since literally forever? And by the way, if you're ever wondering why art, fine art with a capital F, capital A, tends to be very white, cis, het, and, you know, heteronormalized and all that kind of stuff, and colonial, because guess who's been in charge of it, right? This whole time. Guess who's been the purveyors of that academic style of art, of that gallery, of that art critic, right? Up to this point, with very few exceptions. Now it's starting to open up. So I think we're in a time of change. I think we're in a time of flux where we may see some of these things open. You still see the big Christie's auctions where you have, you know, paintings by, who was it? Cézanne, right? Sold for like $400 million. A number my brain can't even wrap around, right? Like, you know, you still have these big art sales going on. I don't know.
Or like the banana tape to a wall.
Is that going to be, well, that's a conceptual art. I'm not going to talk about the art itself, right? Or talk about any quality art or anything like that. I'm just talking about like what people are willing to pay for art. You know, it's just like anything else. It's a capitalist market. So it's worth whatever somebody's willing to pay for it. You know what I mean? So that just is.
You know, it's super, like, first of all, that was super informative. And I was nerding out because in the literary world, like, a lot of the progression is, in some instances, echoes the progression of what was happening in the artistic world at the same time. Because the literary world is largely like this elitist establishment, which often gatekeeps marginalized voices out of the, you know, main sphere of consumption and production, right? So I guess my question would be, like, to both of you, now that art is more accessible, not only for the creator, but for the consumer to a certain degree.
It's getting there, yeah.
Do we think that it's slowly disempowering this elitism of these creative worlds?
I don't think it's ever going to, me personally, I'm sorry if I'm talking over you, Ari. I don't think it's ever going to disassemble that per se, because you're always going to have rich people who like to spend their money on rich people's stuff. What I think this could do, though, is it could dismantle corporate art, right? Like you go to Michael's and you buy the live, laugh, love, puke thing that nobody gives a shit about and you throw away like 2 months later. Like that's what it could displace. It could displace that garbage, right? Like I'm not going to sell you a painting for $500 million. I could sell you a painting for $500 though, right? Like that's within my grasp. Like I've sold things for $1,000, right? Like that's within my grasp. So I think it's more that middling kind of area. I think that's what it's going to change. The upper, you know, a Banksy is always going to be a Banksy, right? A Van Gogh is always going to be a Van Gogh, right? Like these, it's always going to have a following. It's always going to have, And at this point, people just buy them for investments, right? They don't even buy them necessarily because they want a Van Gogh in their house. They're buying it because, oh, it's a Klimt, and I'll store it away in a closet somewhere and then put it in Christie's in 20 years and make $1 million off of it.
NFTs.
I almost thought about bringing up NFTs, but I really think they're on the way out. Like,
I
don't know.
really hope so.
I really do. I think there's
Mhm.
I think it's like a handful of people trading amongst themselves, and that's kind of it.
Yeah.
That could be a whole nother episode, though, about
I
Please
bought
no.
2 types of art that are really cheap. So I was on this Facebook group, Home for Peculiar Artists, and people will sell their art on there all the time, and you just kind of get into that community. I bought a little tiny painting like this for $20, and it's of a cat with a third eye. It's super cute. I have it sitting on my altar. The other kind of art that I've bought are these little woodblock paintings from Artomatics. So basically, the artist will create like a whole series, like 10 or 12 little art block paintings that they send you from the Artomatic. And it gets put into the machine, and then you buy like a $5 coin. And so each art is $5. And you just pick which one you want out of these old cigarette machines that have been like transformed art things.
Oh yeah, are they still doing that? I knew that was a thing 10, 20 years ago.
I bought some in Vegas, and then the last time I was in Texas in Amarillo, they had one at the art gallery there.
I thought about getting one of those old cigarette machines and doing that. I found one in a thrift store one time. Should have picked it up. Yeah, because that's the cool thing. I remember hearing about that. There's actually one somewhere where they were taking entries too, like you could mail them your art.
That's what I'm saying. Let me share the link. Hang on.
Okay.
Because I think that you don't pay to get it put in, or you pay for like a certain type, like the little blocks, and then you sell it for a certain amount of commission.
Yeah. And there's all these different avenues. It's, ways of getting your art in front of people's faces. Because what you want to get is you want to get collectors. You want to get people, you want to get return customers, people that are going to come back and want more of your work. And they're going to tell their friends, hey, my friend Ari, this artist Ari makes great work and I love their work and blah, blah, blah. You should buy their work too. Like that's really what you want to get, is you want to get people who seek you out and who are seeking out your work. So you need to build a name for yourself. And it takes time. And it takes time. Did I mention it takes time? Like it takes a lot of perseverance and a lot of time and a lot of keeping at it and a lot of swearing and a lot of recreational drug of your choice. I didn't say that out loud. I'm just kidding. Kidding. That's a joke, YouTube. Anyway.
Oh my goodness.
I usually will paint when I'm like on my coffee buzz for the day. Like
me too. Well, writing.
Yeah. There you go.
That's like my prime time, is like when my veins are vibrating.
I don't know. It's like for me, like my prime time is like late at night as well, because I'm like winding down, I'm reflective, so on and so forth. But it's just interesting to see how these processes work differently for everybody else. So I have one final question for everyone tonight. So we've been talking about the labels of amateur versus professional. Do you think they are serving a purpose, like a meaningful purpose, or do we think we need to move past those types of boxes, if that makes sense, that we place people into?
I mean, I'm not in control of things. So if I were, then I'd say yes, but I'm only in control of me. So like what I did to try to promote artists, my artist friends, was I was lucky through the pandemic. I was able to work the entire pandemic. I wasn't at all laid off. I didn't have a single hitch. And so I wasn't spending money on going out to the bar. I wasn't spending money on going out to eat. So I bought art from all my artist friends, all of my friends who are just like, hey, I'm broke right now. And all the art fairs that I usually go to are not happening. Can you buy my art? Yes, I will. And I continue to buy art from them. I continue to patronize, the artists that I know and I love. Sometimes I trade art with them. Sometimes that's a thing too. I have tattoos. I don't know if you're aware, but I have tattoos and piercings most of them come through trades. So I've traded art before for other artwork from other artists as well. But support local artists. Never ask an artist to work for free. Just don't do it. It's just
And that
gross.
goes for writers too. Never
Yeah.
ask for their work or services for free, unless
And
like you want to give.
Anybody really. If you want
Yeah.
something from somebody, just like pay them in
Mhm.
general.
Yeah.
Well, and I think we've lived in this world where people have devalued the arts for so long that they just kind of assume that no work goes into them. So they are just free things to consume, and that's not the case,
Right. Like, look where we turned when the pandemic happened. Everybody turned to the arts, right? They turned to movies. All the art galleries and all the art museums in the world put their collections online. A lot of them still have their collections online.
Oh yeah.
You can go see them,
in many ways, arguably, the pandemic allowed the arts to modernize the way they have created their access, like for writing, for music, for all sorts of different, even like libraries, like have kind of taken it to a whole nother level. Museums. It's so interesting.
But yeah, support local artists, support your artist friends when you can. Even if just, by sharing their information on social media. I know this great artist, here's the thing, sharing this link on social media, right? Like sharing, anything you can. Even if you can't afford to buy, you might know somebody who can, or they might know somebody who can, so just spreading the word. A lot of the creativity comes from word of mouth, and a lot of it comes down to, I don't like that guy, or I like that guy, so
yeah,
it's networking.
I think that's
being able to market yourself.
That's the greatest way you can respect any person, because for many of us, what we produce as creators, because I would argue, if we bring things back to the beginning of the show, I think that a creator is a person who produces work for the purpose of like self-fulfillment, cultural fulfillment, or commercial fulfillment, I guess we could say, right? At the end of the day, like, part of ourselves go into what we produce, whether it be the time, whether it be, metaphorically speaking, our identities, our spirits, so on and so forth. So I think those deserve to be celebrated. And like, I know, like, this is a really hot topic for me, because I posted something on social media a few days ago about this, because somebody got mad at me because I can't remember what it was. They did, like, I said no on editing something or whatever, and they kind of blew up on me. And I'm like, no, like, if you want to tap into my writing expertise, like, don't think of it as like just this free use that you can tap into whenever you want,
Right.
because it does take a lot of energy, and that is me that I'm giving to you. So
this is what I do for a living. Why would you devalue it?
Yeah. Or assume that, it's just going to be done free entirely, I guess that is devaluing when you think about it. So final thoughts for the evening. Wisdom, ready, go. Well, we kind of been sharing wisdom, but any other final wisdom tidbits?
So in my opinion, because of TikTok, even bad art is art. And so if you want to create art, you should create art and not worry about the rest.
I love that. I feel that way about writing too. Yeah. Like, if you feel that need to create, then create. And the more you do it, the better you'll get. The more you'll look at other people's work sometimes, It takes effort. Like Sherri was saying earlier, it takes effort.
Yeah, I'm gonna respectfully disagree that the more you do it, the better you'll get, because I guarantee I have an ability to just be horrible forever. Like, I can do the same. I can push out the same schlock for 20 years and wonder why nobody's buying it. So, like, you need to keep yourself open to criticism. You need to find the voices that you can listen to, who you trust, and who will honor you and not just tear you down, but will give you respectful criticism, and and listen to those voices and take it in. And again, don't just assume that you can get that for free, right? Like, for some of us, that's our job. You know what I mean? So again, don't assume that just because that's something somebody does that they will do it for you. But if you are fortunate enough to have people in your life that will do that for you, like find those people and take that criticism.
I agree 100%.
Which is tough as an artist. It's tough to take criticism because it is so much of ourselves.
And that's why I'm glad, though, that we artists stick together, because we need to commiserate about these types of things, but also celebrate each other. Like, I really like that you talked about kind of like surrounding yourself with people, because that at the end of the day, that's where we're going to get the validation we need and the growth that we need. Right. Yeah. So, all right, my friends, let us bid adieu for the evening, but know that we love you and that we are excited to see you again next week. So we will talk to you soon. Love you. Bye.